Hello and welcome to the Real Women, Real Purpose talk show, live in the On Purpose Woman global community and magazine page. I'm Ginny Robertson, one of the hosts of the Real Women, Real Purpose talk show, and I'm also the founder of On Purpose Woman magazine and the founder of the On Purpose Woman global community. My guest today is certified divorce coach Marnie Simpson, and we'll be talking about divorce coaching and how you can get it right from the start. Thanks for being here, Marnie.
You're welcome. It's nice to be here.
I'm excited to dive into our conversation, but first I want to tell our viewers a little bit about you. Marnie Simpson is a certified divorce coach and a pre-divorce mediation coach. A mother and divorcee herself, Marnie used to work for two international consulting firms, where she was first introduced to business and executive coaching. 6 years ago, she decided to become a certified life coach, but recognized her sweet spot was more aligned to coaching women like herself. For example, moms going through divorce. Today, Marnie lives in Jacksonville, Florida, and is actively involved with the Jacksonville Chapter of the NADP, which is the National Association of Divorce Professionals, working with other divorce professionals. In September of 2020, Marnie suffered a terrible accident where she broke her neck while surfing in the ocean. Initially paralyzed, Marnie had major surgery, but regained the use of all of her limbs. Much like divorce, Marnie looks at this event as a life-changing experience, one that can be overcome with patience and optimism. So your story is so remarkable, Marnie. And I was going to start with, what is divorce coaching? But I think I'd rather start with, wow, you came through this. You're still, I think, working through some things, right? You still have some struggles. I would imagine challenges from time to time. I don't know, maybe not, but
I do.
What helped you get through that now helps you work with women, moms going through divorce?
Yeah, that's really interesting because I never really put them side by side, but
Okay.
there is a link. And when I had that accident in the ocean, it definitely changed me. I wasn't supposed to be here anymore because I severed my first C1 and C2 vertebrae. So the struggle I have physically is just like that. My neck has been fused, so I have limited motion going side to side. But other than that, I have been just extremely fortunate. And, I think how I got through that and maybe how I can apply that in my divorce coaching is you can get through anything. You really can. And when you tap into who you really are and surrender to what is happening to you at the moment, it doesn't mean giving up. It means surrendering and accepting. It really helps you in your path moving forward. So I'm not sure if that answers it, but I think, oh, good.
It does for me.
Okay, good.
I'll just take a little aside here. I went through a divorce when I was in my early 30s, and there was no such thing as divorce coaching. I don't think mediation was even a thing yet. It was maybe being talked about, but I don't think it was a thing yet. And I remember being so mired in the past, how unfair this was and how wrong it was, that it was hard for me to actually be present with what was really going on. And I think that's what you're talking about, getting stuck in that. This shouldn't have happened to me, or it shouldn't be happening now, or all of that. And fact is, it happened, right?
It is. And maybe my divorce helped me deal with this because I didn't have those feelings of why me, which was really interesting. I think that would have been one more thing to overcome. And fortunately, I didn't have that. But to your point, Ginny, and I don't want to digress too far if I'm jumping ahead, but when you said that, you were so mired in the past, that is human, and that is what we do, and that is what we women do, and men, but my sweet spot, as you said, is moms. That is what we do when divorce usually hits, whether we're initiating it or it's being initiated. There's so much of the past and the story that we relive, and that's what we come to coaching with. That's what I hear women talk about. You don't understand. This is what happened. This is how I was treated. How can I forgive this unforgivable? And as a coach, as a certified divorce coach, which is a specialty of coaching, the aim is to get them away from that story and into the moment and into the triggers so that they can reframe that and move forward. So there's actually a technique to doing it.
Okay, that would be so helpful, I would imagine, for and just to have someone that understands that it's a normal process, because those are things that you talk about in mediation. There's certainly not things you talk about with your lawyer, right?
Lawyers, their job is the law.
Yeah.
They understand legal, and that is what they do. But it's interesting because, coaching is changing in who it's attracting, and there are more and more attorneys who are realizing that if they want to break through and they want progress for their client and they want the kind of results that they're looking for and their client is looking for, they need to get their client out of that story. They need to calm the overwhelm and bring it down. And more attorneys are beginning to get their certifications for coaching.
Wow,
And
that's
mediators are doing, yeah, it is. It really is. And therapists, which, coaching and therapy are very different. We can go into that a little bit later, but even therapists now are more and more moving in the direction of getting their coaching certification for that reason.
That's good news.
It is. It's a process. It's a process. And I'm not saying that all attorneys are on board by any stretch of the imagination. But, Bill Eddy is a very renowned author and attorney who went the mediation route and the coaching route, and he teaches coaches. So here is an example of an attorney, and he's founded an institute called the, I don't have it off the top of my head, but the High Conflict Institute, and he coaches people on how to coach high conflict. But that's a case of an attorney who's doing it.
Wow.
So.
And it's all about really getting underneath all the superficial stuff into what really is going on. And that is just so important for everyone. Everybody wins when we can do that, don't you think?
I do. And I think that, and I talk only from my experience, and I'm very fortunate because I did not have a highly contested or high conflict situation. It wasn't great. Otherwise, we wouldn't be getting divorced, right? You figure that. But it wasn't high conflict like so many are. But I will say that it was probably one of, and it'd be interested to see if you share that opinion. It was one of the better experiences for me because it really forced me to come into touch with who I really am. And it forced me to go in places that I didn't really want to go beyond the divorce, not just the divorce, but having to support myself and having a family and having to support them. And I didn't have the confidence. And this threw me into it.
I agree.
And you have a coach to help you. It's much better. Go ahead.
And you and I didn't have those coaches when we went through it.
No, I've been divorced 20 years and they certainly weren't around then either.
Gosh, for me, almost 40 years.
They certainly didn't have it then either.
No. But that is, though, to your point, when I really started to dive in and do some work on myself, just because of some circumstances. I didn't wake up one morning and go, I need to work on myself. It was just one thing was presented to me, then another, and I was paying attention. And I was finally able to put myself first in some of this. So I think that was a gift. That was a real gift.
Right.
So the divorce itself was a gift, actually, in retrospect, yeah. So let's go back to the basics here. Tell us what divorce coaching really is and how. I think you mentioned therapy, and is it different from therapy?
I'm really glad you asked that question because that's a question I get asked all the time. And people, they don't understand. And it's very normal because it's a relatively new field. Okay. So people are a little skeptical and they go, if I have a therapist, typically when I got divorced, someone said, get an attorney and find a therapist. Right. And I already had a therapist and she helped me enormously. And she helped me to the point where I was able to make the decision to end my marriage. Right. So coaching, the way I can best frame it is coaching is much more forward looking. Therapy tends to be more back looking. And I can hear therapists in the background say, but wait a minute, that's not true. I look forward as well to the future with my clients. Of course they do. But the starting point, coaching, is where are you now, right? Where do you want to be? How do we get there, and how do we close that gap?
Mm-hmm.
And so I can hear some women saying, I don't know where I want to be. Well, let's coach through that. What I don't do, what coaches typically don't do, is let's talk about how you got here to begin with. It's a very valid conversation. Mm-hmm. What coaches also don't do, if we meet up with a client who is really unable to break through something, and there are other issues that you can tell are feeding that, I will recommend a therapist to deal with that. All right, that's not our milieu,
yeah,
our center. So it's a forward-looking process. It starts where you are now, and there are some therapists that do that, but typically that is what therapy is. Therapy is also usually a much longer process. Mm-hmm. Now, coaching, and that's changing as well. Since COVID and online, people don't have as much time. A lot of coaching sessions, especially in the executive realm, are shortening their sessions. They're laser pointed, focused coaching, which can take up less time. Mm-hmm. I do that as well, and that's a skill I'm always continually developing. But I have clients, for instance, that will start, they'll get over a hump. For instance, they'll find the attorney or the mediator. I will have coached them through the process of mediation and what to expect beforehand. They'll get through it. I want to hear from them. It's great. The divorce is final. Then they come back. My kids are acting up really badly. Or they get back from my spouses, and I can tell there's some alienation going on. Okay. I'm not an alienation expert. I would refer them to perhaps a therapist who specializes in, like a guardian ad litem, for instance, or a therapist that specializes in that. But I coach them to do that.
Okay.
And where they are now, how can they handle that?
That makes such sense. And it's such a great, just a great method, I think, and a nice package of, you never know what's going to come up once the divorce is final. I think some people think, oh, we're done. If there aren't children involved, sometimes you just are done. You are done. My husband, my current husband, and his wife are like that. Things signed, it's done. We're done. I mean, they were friendly. There were no children. It was just easy.
Without children, it's a different story.
Very different story. Yeah.
And without children, I mean, truthfully, mediation is really, I mean, you could do pro se, which means you're doing it on your own, just the two of you, or you can go to mediation. When you don't have the parenting agreement to work out, it makes it a little bit easier, less complicated, mm-hmm. Right? But once you have
less emotional stuff around it too, I would imagine.
So let's just say you have kids, and all of a sudden, your spouse, you divorced, as you said, you're all fine, kids are good. Okay, we have a third person coming in. Your spouse meets somebody. Okay, hopefully that new spouse, and you and he or she can all get along great, right? You don't know. And what's the impact on the kids, right? There's so many different ramifications.
Yeah. Well, when is a good time for someone to first speak with a divorce coach? Like at what place in the process, when they're just thinking something's not working here? Or how early? What's the best early time for them to start thinking about it?
Well, ideally, mm-hmm. I like it when they come to me when they're either thinking of it, just to make sure that their eyes are wide open, that they know this is a non-emotional decision, or if they are very much in the emotion, let's get them out of it a little bit so that the decision is clear. The communication with the spouse is and the children is clear. There's a plan, right? Not just, I blurted out that it was over, my kids were there, I need a coach now, right?
Mhm.
Typically, what happens is people come at the last minute, like any crisis, that's when we change. That's when we do something. Ideally, yeah, Ginny, it's great if they can come, but people come at all different times. But ideally, that's a really good time for them to come.
Have you ever had a client who came and then during the process of coaching realized they really didn't want a divorce? Is that happening through coaching?
That happens. That definitely happens. And my stand on that is, I'm not pro-divorce.
Mhm.
I am not against divorce. I am for helping the mom decide what's best for her. An interesting thing I'm just going to interject here about coaching. It is not advice giving. All right. And it's really easy for all of us who are in the helping mental health professions to want to give advice, right? It's really easy to do that. I catch myself doing that all the time. Ask my kids. So I do. But it really, the skill comes in coaching when you learn to ask reflective questions so that they reflect, so that they can come up with their own decisions. Because when they do that, they're clear on it and they move on it. So you don't give advice. Do I get divorced or not? Well, let's walk down that path and let's just see, what does that look like from a financial standpoint, from an emotional standpoint, from a legal standpoint, financial, legal, emotional, and social. They're really 4 divorces that someone's going through at any given time. And they think it's just one divorce, but no, you want to break it down. There's a lot going on here, Mom, and we need to look at that before we make the decision.
I've never looked at it that way before. That's brilliant to look at all those chunks, because they all seem to show up at the same time and they're very different and you have to handle each one of them, right?
Don't you remember, sort of, maybe you don't, because it's hard for me to remember. You're going back even a little bit further, but there was just so much coming at you. Well, what about this? And what about the kids? And how am I going to tell my parents and my family who just adore my spouse? How am I going to do that? Right? There's just, and church, temple, whatever. I'm very active in that, and they don't support that. How am I going to do it? There's just those are just the fringe, but there's so many different things, and they come at you at night, typically, right? And then you go, uh-oh, I don't know. So
yeah, that I can so relate to that, because I was the first person in my family to get divorced.
Wow.
And in fact, my sister, my much older sister, who was 13 years older, the year after I did that, and my parents didn't die from it, she left her husband of many, many, many years. And I think that
so you set the trend. You were the brave one, and she followed you.
Yes, yeah. And then, one of I think she was holding on for those other people, not just for the kids. That's always a reason I'm sure that we come up with. I realized, of course, for myself, that my son was so much better with us individually than he was with us together. But,
Really?
You have to work through that. And there's so many things to work through. And it sounds like what you provide in a nutshell, but it's hard to put it in a nutshell, though. You give women an opportunity to start to feel empowered by their decision making, and they get to start making decisions for themselves and their children. And the bottom line is, it doesn't matter what their parents are thinking. It doesn't matter what the neighbors are talking about. It doesn't matter whether you lose some friends or not because they went with him, because we do, with something happens, we lose friends because they take sides, and they can't be with us. So you give them this soft, I love the term soft place to land.
Yeah, it is.
Not judging.
No.
Because I remember, if I talked to a friend, they would have an opinion. And one said, stay, and one said, you better get out of there now. and that's not helpful.
They're trying to be helpful.
We're trying to be helpful, but it isn't helpful. It just leads to more confusion. So you help them with clarity. You help them come up with some clear vision for their life. At least that's what I'm hearing.
Yes, that is the space I provide, but let's be really clear on this. There's two of us in that space, right? So I try to provide the opening and the space for them. There needs to be a willingness to do the work.
Yeah.
And very often, getting back to the beginning of our conversation, Ginny, getting stuck in your story. That is the only thing they have at that point to hold on to. And to surrender that and let go of that and fall in those deep waters of uncertainty is a very, very difficult thing to do. And not everyone is ready for it. And if they're not ready for it, then I might recommend a therapist, right?
Yeah.
Or I might recommend, here's some things to think about. Let's talk about this when you've had a chance to think about that, right? I provide the space, sure, and maybe some of the guidance and the questions, but they're the ones that need to make that decision.
Great point. And it can being someone who was mired in that space for a while, and I had all this support around me being in that space, and it seemed to attract other women who were in that space going through that, and we would just get together and it would be like, rah, 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 rah. Do you know what he did now? And then there came a point, and I don't remember now what the catalyst was, that I said, this isn't helping me. This isn't healthy for me. I need to do something different. And that might have been when I had gone to a therapist before that. We'd actually tried marriage counseling, and it didn't work. We got thrown out of marriage counseling because we weren't ready for that.
Well, I know I wasn't either. I understand. Not everyone, I was holding on to my story too much.
So for anyone who feels like you're in that space, it's not wrong to be in that space. It's just going to take you longer to get to what you want.
Yes. And look,
you really want moving forward, right?
Exactly. And you said it yourself, you had to get, you had your crying sessions, and I don't like the word pity party because it sounds terrible. It sounds like it's being dismissive. And it's not. It's part of the process. And you need to go through that to get to the point where you realize, okay, it's not helping anymore. And that's what you said. On average, I don't recall where I read this, but on the average amount of time that it takes a woman to make a decision to end her marriage is on average 4 years.
Wow.
So there is a lot of that, trying to figure out what's going on, the unhappiness, the putting up with the unhappiness, the trying, it not working. I mean, it's a long cycle. So, they may come to me when they're really, really close to making that decision, coming out of that cycle. And that's why I like being there, because when they've been thinking about it and tossing it around in their minds so long, it's nice to have someone say, okay, well, let's look at it fresh. Let's look at what the impact would be. What are you actually getting into with this divorce? Mm-hmm. Well, how is it going to impact the kids? How is it going to impact your finances? You want to stay in the house, right? Is that really possible? And I'm not an expert on all of these, but what I do is I recommend experts to women. I mean, one of the first things I say is, not first, but when we get to that point, how are you with the finances? Now, typically, not always, a lot of women, a lot of moms, because they're busy taking care of their kids, and if they're working or if they're not working, they leave the finances to the spouse, right? So I asked to try to find out, how familiar are you? Because you're going to need to put together, and we can do this together. I can help you structure an affidavit that you're going to need, that you will give to an attorney to review, because I am not a legal expert. But before even getting there, do you understand your finances? Do you understand the implications? No. Mm-hmm. So either I can help them find it where everything is, or what I might also do at the same time is, you need to see a certified divorce financial analyst. And you can have a consultation for free. just to get you, give you some information so you know what you're looking at. That's what a coach does, right? Puts them on the road to helping themselves.
And to provide some resources for them.
Yeah, and resources. Exactly.
Well, I've learned from you that the divorce process changes and laws change over the years. And something that you mentioned when we were planning this talk is that mediation is mandatory in most states. I didn't know that. So mediation, would you say just quickly what mediation is and how you can help someone before they go into mediation?
Sure, and I'll say that quickly. Mediation is an alternative dispute resolution process. All right. So typically in the past, litigation has been the way people have gone. Excuse me, if they don't settle themselves. Mediation, you go in to see a mediator that you both agree on, right? This person, he or she is a neutral party, all right? And their role is to help each participant, each party, come to an agreement on their finances and on their parenting plans, and then a general agreement. Now, the reason the courts are beginning to, I don't want to say kick out, they're not, but because litigation will always be there. And if it's really contentious, that's where it's going to end up, most likely. But the courts are realizing it takes way too much time to go through all of the nitty-gritty. You have two attorneys representing two people, and it takes a lot of time. So more and more courts are saying, before you come to us, you go into mediation.
Wow.
Okay. Now, not all states are doing it, but now there are some counties in different states that are doing it, even if the states aren't doing it themselves. Now, Florida, where I reside, it is mandatory. It is not mandatory to reach an agreement, but it is mandatory.
So you have to try, right?
You have to try. But here's the tricky part, right? I'm careful saying this because it's not always the case, but attorneys and litigators in particular earn their revenues and their income from going to court, okay? And the incentive sometimes is to resolve it quickly, but more often than not, the quicker you resolve it, the quicker the attorneys are out of the picture. Let's just put it that way, okay? So so even though mediation is mandatory in the state of Florida and in other states, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's an incentive by all attorneys involved to resolve it, okay?
So people go into mediation sometimes already having an attorney.
Yes, and
the attorney go with them to mediation as well?
sometimes.
Okay.
Sometimes. And in Florida, that is typically, at least in northeastern Florida where I live, that's pretty much how it's been. And what I like to do, I mean, sometimes it really works, it works beautifully. But what I try to encourage, if possible, is to, even if the attorneys are there, I empower women, because that is my niche, to know what they're going into, to feel knowledgeable and confident to not only navigate mediation on their own, the attorney can be there, but they take the directive, but also to engage in it. It's really easy to have an attorney say, listen, I'll take care of it. The mediator needs to speak to both parties, but the attorneys can direct that. They can make it a smooth process, or they can make it a complicated process. And what I try to do is, I mean, I had a client recently who said, well, my attorney was the one, and this was actually out of state. My attorney chose the mediator. And I said, you going to meet the mediator beforehand? And no. Now it turned out it worked out great. She had a wonderful attorney. Okay. And, but what I like to encourage people to do is, fine, if your attorney wants to recommend a mediator, go interview that mediator. Interview another one. have your spouse do the same thing on their side, and both of you come up with someone that you both feel is, because there are different types of mediators. These are the kinds of things that I instruct, that I talk about and try to coach women about before they go into mediation, so they know what kind of mediator, what to look for in a mediator, what the process is going to look like, to identify the triggers that they know are going to trigger them, because they're going to be either in the same room or close by. Okay. There's a lot of, it can be pretty emotional. So that's why pre-coaching is really, really valuable. And I was trained in that too. So I like to do that.
So to be able to be ready for the triggers and have the response there instead of the gut thing that you're going to blurt out, that is so valuable, I think.
Yeah, instead of coming up and going, gee, what's happening next? You're like a deer in the headlight. You're just,
right.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to bring up a little bit of my experience because it's a bit of a cautionary tale, and it's, as I said, many years ago, mediation wasn't a thing, but my husband and I didn't want to spend a lot of money on a divorce. And so we had our own agreement, we had everything worked out as far as custody and child stuff and money and all of that. But we needed somebody to actually file the divorce. So we needed somebody to actually take care of that. So he talked to, I think, at least 3 different attorneys to get them to do that. And the first 3 wouldn't do it. Even if I signed something, which I had to eventually do, was sign something that said I agreed to not having my own attorney, because this was technically his attorney, right? But the first 3 didn't like our agreement and said, you don't have to give her that. No, you don't have to. No, let me tell you how you can get out of doing that. And so they were trying to make it adversarial. And that was what we were trying to not do. Now, so it worked out. We got somebody to do it. But long-term, down the road, in a few years, this is the cautionary part. And I don't think it was anything that he thought about, that we just couldn't plan for certain things that were going to happen down the road. And we had no way to deal with them then. And in my case, it was a losing proposition because I had no recourse at all. And so it's really important to know what you're getting into. It's not just about getting that divorce filed. It's not just about getting it done. It's about having clear guidance from someone like you. If you need an attorney, or if you have to go into mediation with an open mind and picking like the people that you want to work with, just have your eyes wide open and don't think, well, that person would never do that. I mean, we have an amicable divorce. They would never do that, because they might.
Absolutely.
Or it could just be something that slipped by that maybe they didn't need to do it. So that's all I want to say about that.
It's important though. That's a really, really important point, Ginny. I'm really glad you brought that up, because you're walking a tightrope, because you don't know what's going to happen down the road, right? And, in your case, these 3 attorneys were trying to get you to become adversarial. That's what it sounded like, right? But there's a fine distinction there, because any agreement that you come up with, even if you don't hire an attorney, even in mediation, you need to have an attorney review it beforehand. And a coach is there, and a good mediator is there, but a coach is also there to take a look at it and ask you questions. What do you think about this? There's something in here that maybe we're not thinking about, that we could be thinking about. And even as a coach, I mean, we're going to miss stuff because you just don't know down the road. But you want to go in there with your eyes as wide open as you possibly can. And attorneys can be very, very helpful for that, especially those who do not like adversarial. And there are some who don't. I haven't met as many, quite honestly. But there are. So yeah, absolutely. The eyes being wide open. And that's why I do recommend professionals to them outside. Loan specialists. There are people who specialize in providing loans to women who are going through a divorce, right?
There are people who do that?
Yes.
Wow.
There are, not just women, but men and women. But I say for women because that's my honest. CDFA, Certified Divorce Financial Analyst, right? That's a very, very precise field. Even realtors, that specialize in working with couples that are going through divorce. And so I try to recommend when that need comes up, I try to identify and say, this would be really helpful for you to look at this. So your eyes can be wide open.
Wow. Boy, you've opened my eyes about a lot of things I didn't know, and I don't plan on needing a divorce coach down the
Well,
road.
I hope you don't.
No, it's not going to happen with us. But how would anyone who wants to learn more about divorce coaching, either for themselves or to share with others, because we all know somebody who could use this information and this guidance, how might they find out more information or connect with you?
Well, they can connect with me on my website, which is breakthroughdivorcecoaching.com. And on that website, there it explains a little bit about my practice and my philosophy. And also there's an area where they can fill out, it's a questionnaire. It's not too long, but it's a way that I can identify before we speak what some of the issues are. And then I offer, most coaches do this and offer a complimentary first session, which it's not that long. I mean, it can be anywhere from 15 minutes to a half an hour, 45 at most, if we can get out of that story, because often that story, that's when it starts creeping in. But that's what I like to do in that session is just understand what the key issues is right then and there, what I can do as a coach to support that, and how I work as a coach. So that's how they can get in touch with me, and that's how I can help them. I also do frequent webinars on pre-mediation coaching, where I give them a taste and highlight of what mediation is like, because it's becoming more and more popular. And as I mentioned earlier, the things to look for when they are going to hire a mediator, communication strategies, idea of what the parenting plan looks like, and all of the things. And, on these plans, they don't need to negotiate every single point, but it's nice to go into a mediation having an idea of what's going to be on there, and knowing what is important to you and how to craft that opening statement, which is critical. All right. So those are the kinds of things. So I do a free webinar on that pretty regularly, and I advertise it on different, Facebook, your Facebook, I do, the On Purpose Women Global Community. I've advertised it there and other places. And if someone's really interested, they can always email me and ask me when I'm doing my next one, because that's something that I can do as well. Are your past ones anywhere? Are they on your website or somewhere that they're all together that people? They're not. I haven't recorded them, but I am going to.
They're live in person.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they're live in person. They're yeah. And so it's an opportunity for people to ask questions as well. And I'm going to soon, there's things in the pot that I'm working on. I'm going to, in the Jacksonville area, I'm going to be giving like coffee hours. I'm hoping once a week, where I'm going to just ask women to come in. We'll have a cup of coffee at some Starbucks or something, and just ask questions about divorce, and so that they can kind of, start educating people. That's really what I'd like to do. I haven't gotten to that yet, but I'm working my way through that now. Well, if someone goes on your website, do you have a place there where they can sign up for your email list? If they sign up for the webinar, that's where I get
for the webinar on your website.
No, but you're making.
How do they get?
Well, I know what I do is what I've been doing so far is I've been advertising it on Facebook, on different Facebook pages, and I have a Facebook page too,
that might be a good place for people
which is where they can sign up for it too, and that is again, that's Breakthrough Divorce Coaching. That's my Facebook page as well, and they can definitely get it there. Yes. Great. Well, would you like to? Well, I'm not going to ask you. I would like for you to leave us with some final words of wisdom. Just if you can encapsulate something you think is really important for our viewers today. Well, I think what you said earlier, I'm going to take something from you because I think that's really important. Just have your eyes open, right? When you're going into this process, know what you're getting into, and be prepared if you're really serious about undertaking some work with a coach. Be prepared to do the work, to let go of your story, because your story, though it's important, is going to keep you trapped.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's what I would say. And know that you're not alone. There is a team out there. There are many of us. There's more and more certified divorce coaches. I would go with a certified divorce coach versus a life coach, because, and maybe this, I'll end with this, it's a specialty, as I said, it's a subset of coaching in general. But there are things that you need to know about divorce and how it works and the different kinds of options people have and the language that you're going to be presented with. So there's that whole level of divorce coaching, in and of itself, and the other coaching around the emotions, letting go of the story, knowing what your triggers are, and going down that road too.
Okay, great words. Thank you.
Welcome.
And thank you for sharing your expertise with us too, but thank you also for doing this really important work. And your demeanor, you have such a kind, compassionate demeanor about you. I imagine that you put women at ease.
I try.
That's how I feel. We've never met in person, but we've been on Zoom together quite a bit, and you have that. And I think it shows in this interview today that you've got that open, I'm here for you kind of, and calming influence that a woman might just be able to sink into a chair and breathe, and so thank you for doing this work.
Thank you, Ginny,
for being with me today. And thank all of you for joining us for the Real Women, Real Purpose Talk Show live in the On Purpose Woman magazine and Global Community Facebook page. If you love this interview and want to share it with your friends, it will be on our YouTube channel in the next 48 hours. So go over to On Purpose Woman Global Community on YouTube, subscribe, and sign up for notifications. There are over 120 inspiring, informative, and fun shows for you to watch on our channel. And in May, we started sharing videos of the speakers at our On Purpose Woman Global Community Zoom gatherings. So it's an added benefit. We have 3 more shows for you next week. On Monday, July 18th, I'll speak with certified hypnotherapist Beverly Hamilton about hypnosis for fertility, childbirth, and beyond. On Tuesday, July 19th, Catherine Yarborough, the other host of the Real Women, Real Purpose Talk Show, will talk with Lilia Shoshana Ray about 3 questions to guide your on-purpose life. And on Wednesday, July 22nd, I'll speak with book mentor Mary Knipple about how your story matters. So let's hear it. You can always find out what's coming up on the Real Women, Real Purpose Talk Show by going to my website, www.opwgc.com, and clicking on Purpose Woman magazine. Look for the spread and the table of contents. And while you're there, check out the On Purpose Woman Global Community. Thank you again for watching the Real Women, Real Purpose Talk Show.
Thank you.